I was looking at him, we had a stare down, and he's just filled with demons. He's dark pits of eyes. There's something seriously wrong with that man. I looked him straight in the eyes, and I just seen black holes and just anger at me. He was telling me with his face that he fucking hated me.
Did you enter the residence at 1122 King Road on November 13th, 2022 in Moscow, Idaho with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder?
Yes.
The defendant entered through the kitchen sliding door on the back side of the residence.
They've said the entry point was the slider.
Went to the third floor and with a knife killed Madison Mogan and Kaylee Gonzalez. For whatever reason, the sheath for a K-bar knife was left on the bed next to Madison Mogan's body, and single source male DNA was found on the snap of that sheath, as well as blood from both Kaylee and Madison. Xana Knodel was still awake at this time. In fact, had taken a DoorDash order not long before this started. Her room was not on the third floor, it was on the second floor. As the defendant was either coming down the stairs or leaving, he encountered Xana, and he ended up killing her. Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was asleep in their bedroom. The defendant killed him as well. Each victim suffered multiple wounds.
His girlfriend, Xana Knodel, was one of the other victims in that they were in the same room.
A residence immediately to the northwest of 1122 King Road picked up distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper followed by a loud thud. A dog can be heard barking numerous times starting at 4:17 a.m. The security camera is less than 50 feet from the Knodel's bedroom.
Dateline quotes investigative sources as saying the killer sat down in a chair in Xana's room exhausted, leaving impressions from blood on the chair.
There were two other roommates, and they were already asleep. One of those roommates awoke, looked out her door.
Dylan stated she was awoken at approximately 4 a.m. by what she stated sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog.
Dylan opens her door.
She looked out her bedroom but did not see anything. She opened her door a second time when she heard what she thought was crying from Knodel's room. She heard a male voice say something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." According to the newly released police files, Dylan heard a voice she believed it to be Kaylee's. Dylan said she heard Kaylee scream and announce there was somebody inside the residence. Dylan said she could hear Kaylee run from the third floor down the stairs to the second floor into the northwest bedroom. Although Dylan says she thought it was Kaylee, it very well could have been Xana bringing her DoorDash order to the kitchen. She heard something, went upstairs, and then ran back down. Dylan said she locked herself in her bedroom and continued to hear a commotion.
Dylan hears some yelling and some commotion.
Dylan said eventually she stopped hearing a struggle and heard a male voice say, "You're gonna be fine, I'm gonna help you." Dylan said she did not recognize the male's voice. Dylan said after a few minutes she peeked out of her bedroom and observed a male described as 6 foot tall, slim build with a black ski mask walking towards her as she stood in a frozen shock phase and then leave the second floor patio area. This patio door was likely left open as it was found open upon my arrival.
There's no damage to anything, and the door was still open when we got there.
After Dylan saw the man leave, we find out text messages between her and Bethany, who was on the bottom floor sleeping. DM is Dylan and BF is Bethany. No one is answering. I'm really confused right now. Dylan to Kaylee. Kaylee, what's going on? Bethany to Dylan. Yeah, dude, WTF. Xana was wearing all black. No, it's like ski mask almost. Shut the F up, actually. Like he had something over his forehead and a mouth. I'm not kidding. I'm so freaked out. My phone is going to die. Bethany to Dylan, come to my room. Run! Down here! During the text exchange, Dylan also attempted contacting Ethan through Snapchat. She again tried calling Kaylee and Xana, but neither responded. Then exited her room and began running towards Bethany's room. On her way, she noticed Xana laying on the floor of her bedroom, with her head towards the wall and her feet towards the door. Dylan thought Xana was drunk. Once Dylan arrived at Bethany's room, they locked the door and made additional unanswered calls to the other roommates. At 4:32 a.m., Dylan again texted Kaylee, "Please answer." Finally, we get to hear the 911 call and hear details of when friends were summoned by the surviving roommate. They met Dylan and Bethany at the bottom floor of the house. Together, Dylan and Bethany and Hunter started to walk up the stairs to the second floor. When they reached the second floor, Hunter went to the kitchen to grab a kitchen knife. When he came back out, Dylan, quote, saw Xana again for a split second, and I just started bawling because I thought she had I don't even know. I thought maybe she was still drunk and all asleep on the floor. Bethany also saw Xana laying on the floor. Hunter told Dylan and Bethany to get out. Emily, who had started up the stairs, also turned around after Hunter instructed her not to come any further. They both went outside shortly afterwards. Hunter exited the house and told him to call 911.
Their friend Josie Louderin, who was also there, describing the moments in the docuseries.
Hunter was ahead of me and Emily and immediately was pushed out, and Hunter was like, get out, somebody call 911.
On location of your emergency.
Hi, something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what. 1122.
I'll talk to you guys. We live at the White, so we're next to them.
And tell me exactly what's going on.
One of the roommates has passed out, and she was drunk last night and she's not waking up. Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah, I just tell you what happened pretty much.
What is going on currently?
I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m.
Okay, I need to know what's going on right now. Is she breathing?
No.
Okay.
At 11:58 a.m., a 911 call was placed. Moscow Police Department officers responded and located 4 victims, 2 on the second floor and 2 on the third floor.
As authorities entered the home, the friends say they were told to sit outside.
We watched the ambulance come and we watched them immediately leave, so.
New details in the timeline have also come out. Approximately 2 a.m., they met up in Kaylee's bedroom and talked for a while before going to bed. The 5th roommate, Xana Kernodle, who was out with her boyfriend Ethan Chapin, was not home yet. The roommates debated going out to a food truck for a late snack, prompting Dylan to send a text at 2:10 a.m. to an Uber driver she knew to see if he was driving. Ultimately, however, the girls decided just to go to bed.
Kaylee Gonsalves and Madison Morgan were at a local bar and were later at a food truck in downtown Moscow.
I think I would like the carbonara.
Okay. They arrived home at approximately 1:45 a.m. Ethan Chapin and Xana Kernodle were at the Sigma Chi house before also arriving home.
Did you kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
Madison Mogan's fatal injuries included a left lung laceration and a liver laceration. Madison only had sharp force injuries.
Maddie was my only child that I ever had. She's the only great thing I ever really did, and the only thing I was really ever proud of. And
did you kill and murder Kaylee Gonsalves, a human being?
Yes.
She went home Friday to literally go show off her new vehicle.
I remember I was at my parents' house. We were watching the Raider game, and my mom gets a call, and she's immediately frantic. It was my cousin, and she said something bad had happened to specifically Kaylee. And we didn't know anything until the sheriff showed up, and that there was 4 victims. My mom asked if Maddie was one as well, and he confirmed that. There's no closure. As of now, I don't even think I've begun the grieving or the mourning process. I still see people out in public that have Kaylee's hairstyle, and I think, that, oh, Kaylee's here. And it takes a second to snap out of that, but it'll be a step in the right direction once the person responsible for these crimes is properly incarcerated.
Kaylee Gonsalves, a senior whose family said was the ultimate go-getter and adventurer.
Kaylee Gonsalves' fatal injuries included a left lung laceration, a liver laceration, 2 subdural bleeds, and a stab behind her clavicle, which cut her subclavian vein and artery. Kaylee had signs of sharp force injuries, asphyxial injuries, and blunt force injuries. Kaylee had 20+ stab wounds.
My name is Olivia, and I'm the big sister of Kaylee Gonsalves, and I was blessed to love Madison Mogan as a sister too. I'm not here today to speak in grief. I'm here to speak in truth. Because the truth is, my sister Kaylee and her best friend Maddie were not yours to take. They were not yours to study, to stalk, or to silence. They were two pieces of a whole, the perfect yin and yang. They are everything that you could never be. Loved, accepted, vibrant, accomplished, brave, and powerful. Because the truth about Kaylee and Maddie is they would have been kind to you. If you had approached them in their everyday lives, they would have given you directions, thanked you for the compliment, or awkwardly giggled to make your own words less uncomfortable for you. In a world that rejected you, they would have shown mercy. Because the truth is, I'm angry. Every day I'm angry. I'm left shouting at the inside of my own head everything I wish I could say to you. The truth about me is when I heard the news, I didn't cry. I listened for them. I promised them I would, that I would fight for them, that I would show up no matter what it cost me. I swore I'd never let them feel alone. Because you see, I've always been their heavyweight. I've always been the one to fight the battles they didn't feel ready to fight themselves. All it ever took was a call, and they knew I would handle it for them, no matter the time, no matter the cost. They could wave their white flag because they knew I would never back down, not for them, and not even death could change that. Somewhere along the line, I started to think about what I would say to them if I was given just one last chance. If I could gather enough heartbreak or love or sacrifice or whatever it took to get just one message across, what would I say? Throughout this entire process, I've written my feelings down at every moment, my wishes, my love, my denial, my anger. And as one final act of love, I'd planned to read these thoughts, even jarring and discombobulating and not even making sense. Because for me, that was true love. As bare and as naked as it could be, not laced in pretty words or dressed for the occasion, but written through bleary eyes at 2 a.m. with clenched fists, angry at this reality. My true final act of love was to continue on without them, for them. That dream to read aloud my love to them, to bring meaning through pain, was the latest blow in realizing you don't deserve it. And Kaylee and Maddie don't need it. Kaylee and Maddie have always known my love, and they would never ask me to prove it by further victimizing myself to a defendant who has shown no guilt, no remorse, no apprehension. They would say to me, "Why would you give the satisfaction of showing vulnerability now? You promised you would never back down." And for that clarity, I'm thankful. I won't stand here and give you what you want. I won't offer you tears. I won't offer you trembling. Disappointments like you thrive on pain, on fear, and on the illusion of power. And I won't feed your beast. Instead, I will call you what you are. Sociopath, psychopath, murderer. I will ask the questions that reverberate violently in my own head, so loudly that I can't think straight most any day. Some of these might be familiar, so sit up straight when I talk to you. How was your life right before you murdered my sisters? Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your apartment? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this time. Why did you choose my sisters? Before making your move, did you approach my sisters? Detail what you were thinking and feeling. Before leaving their home, is there anything else you did? How does it feel to know the only thing you failed more miserably at than being a murderer is trying to be a rapper? Did you recently start shaving or manually pulling out your eyebrows? Why November 13th? Did you truly think your Amazon purchase was untraceable because you used a gift card? How do you find it enjoyable to stargaze with such a severe case of visual snow? Where is the murder weapon? The clothes you wore that night? What did you bring into the house with you? What was the second weapon you used on Kaylee? What were Kaylee's last words? Please describe in detail the level of anxiety you must have felt when you heard the Bearcat pull up to your family home on December 30th, 2022. Which do you regret more? Returning to the crime scene 5 hours later, or never, ever going back to Moscow, not even once, after stalking them there for months? If you were really smart, do you think you'd be here right now? What's it like needing this much attention just to feel real? You're terrified of being ordinary, aren't you? Do you feel anything at all? Or are you exactly what you always feared? Nothing. If you're so powerful, then why are you still hiding, defendant? You see, I'm here today as me. But who are you? Let's try to take off your mask and see. You didn't create devastation. You revealed it in yourself. And that darkness you carry, that emptiness, you'll sit with it long after this is over. That is your sentence. And it was written on the wall long before you ever pled guilty. You didn't win. You just exposed yourself as the coward you are. You're a delusional, pathetic, hypochondriac loser who thought you were so much smarter than everybody else. Constantly scolding, turning your nose up to grammar mistakes, nitpicking and criticizing others. You wanted so badly to be different, to be special, to be better, to be deep, to be mysterious. You found yourself thinking you were better than everyone else, and you thought you could figure out the human psyche and see through it, all while tweaked out on heroin. Lurking in the shadows made you feel powerful because no one ever paid you any attention in the light. You thought you were exceptional, all because of a grade on a paper. You thought you were elite because your online IQ test from 2010 told you so. All of that effort just to seem important. It's desperate. There is a name for your condition, though. Your inflated ego just didn't allow you to see it. Wannabe. You act like no one could ever understand your mind, but the truth is you're basic. You're a textbook case of insecurity disguised as control. Your patterns are predictable. Your motives are shallow. You are not profound. You're pathetic. You aren't special or deep, not mysterious or exceptional. Don't ever get it twisted again. No one is scared of you today. No one is intimidated by you. No one is impressed by you. No one thinks that you are important. You orchestrated this like you thought you were God. Now look at you, begging a courtroom for scraps. You spent months preparing, and still all it took was my sister in a sheath. You work so hard to seem dangerous, but real control doesn't have to prove itself. The truth is, the scariest part about you is how painfully average you turned out to be. The truth is, you're as dumb as they come. Stupid, clumsy, slow, sloppy, weak, dirty. Let me be very clear. Don't ever try to convince yourself you mattered just because someone finally said your name out loud. I see through you. You want the truth? Here's the one you'll hate the most. If you hadn't attacked them in their sleep, in the middle of the night, like a pedophile, Kaylee would have kicked your fucking ass. Thank you.
Thank you. Xana Kernodle.
Yes. Xana was a junior majoring in marketing and worked as a server at a local restaurant with victim Madison Mogan, a senior in marketing.
She didn't really worry about the drama stuff that much. She wasn't into that. She just liked having fun, wasn't worried about materialistic things.
Xana Kernodle's fatal injuries were from 1 laceration in her right lung and 2 lacerations in her heart. Kernodle had 50 plus stab wounds, mostly defensive. Xana only had sharp force injuries. Madison Mogen's fatal injuries included a left lung laceration and a liver laceration.
Hi, my name's Randy, stepdad of Xana. I just feel the same way we all do. All of us are united because of something that happened, and I am grateful to know and have met some new family because of this awful event. But this is probably the last time we're all going to be in the same room together, let's be real. So I can say I love you all, and I feel your pain, and just God bless us all, you know? I had stuff wrote up. It was probably best I didn't read it out. Probably get kicked out of here. So this evil thing is not going to take nothing from us. You, man, I don't know what my limits are here, but I'm really struggling, dude. I am struggling because I want to just be out in the woods with you just so I can teach you about loss and pain. I love God. I wouldn't take your life. That's up to him. But I guarantee you, you are weak. God, I would just give a moment, man, 5 minutes out in the woods. Oh, man. You're going to go to hell. I know people believe in other stuff. You're evil. There's no place for you in heaven. You took our children. You are gonna suffer, man. I'm shaking because I want to reach out to you, but I hope you feel my energy, okay? Go to hell.
Ethan Chapin.
Yes.
Ethan stayed the night at his girlfriend's house.
Ethan Chapin, a triplet from Washington, majoring in sport and tourism management in his freshman year.
And his girlfriend, Xana Kernodle, a junior who majored in marketing.
Xana wrote, "Life is so much better with you in it. Love you."
Ethan only had sharp force injuries. Ethan's fatal injury was from a stab wound under his left clavicle, which severed his subclavian vein and subclavian artery, and also his jugular vein was severed.
And do you understand that by pleading guilty, the state no longer has to prove those things because you're admitting those things are true?
Yes.
Now that we have the autopsy reports, we can now compare what the reports say to what statements were made by family and the coroner.
So horrific, the coroner is still processing what she saw.
They'll be looking under fingernails. They'll be doing all sorts of different exams. It was very, very traumatic. They were all murdered through stabbing with some kind of probably a larger knife.
There were multiple stab wounds. The fatal ones were to the chest area or the upper body area. Most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound.
There were stab wounds on the hands of at least one of the students that make it appear that it would be defensive wounds.
Her sister.
It's terrible. I cannot fathom in my head what kind of person did this.
It's capable.
And why?
Weird porn fetishes, but 2 of the fetishes were in that room. Drunk, passed out girls and gagging girls. And those are 2 things that were part of that crime scene. For Thompson to say that there was no sexual assault, of course there wasn't. He didn't have enough time. Somebody came up there. There was some damage around her mouth right here, like somebody had pressed in and tried to keep her quiet. It was horrific what Kaylee went through. She was stabbed over 30 plus times and she was struck. There was quite a bit of damage to her face. So this guy's just an absolute monster. Anyone who thinks that he's otherwise, I just looked at pure demons out there.
This was a brutal weapon.
Their means of death don't match.
Kaylee's injuries were more significant than that of Maddie's.
Their points of damage don't match.
They weren't stab wounds. They were like large punctures.
One of the girls was a little more intoxicated. He was able to go after Maddie Mae first, and my daughter woke up, and he struck her multiple times, and
broke her nose.
They're telling us that there's so much evidence that it's going to take a lot of time to process it all. This person was sloppy. He made a mess, and there's a mess there, and they're going to have to go through that point by point.
An interesting note about Kaylee's bedroom. I then followed Officer Smith upstairs to the 3rd floor of the residence. The bedroom on the west side of the floor was later determined to be Kaylee Goncalves' room. This room appeared neat and picked up. The only thing of note was that the sheets on the bed were pulled back in a manner which suggested someone had been laying in bed. Did Bryan enter the house looking for Maddie, which was identified by her boots and the letter M on her window? Once his target was found, did Kaylee hear commotion and go into Madison's room? Or were they sleeping in the same bed together all along? Bethany Funk, one of the 2 surviving roommates, told police that about a month earlier, Kaylee had taken her dog Murphy outside when she saw an unknown man up above their house to the south staring at her. It was concerning enough that Kaylee told everybody about it and called her roommates to ask if they'd be home soon, Bethany said. Then on November 4th, 9 days before the attack, the roommates came home at 11 a.m. to find the door open, loose on its hinges, as the wind blew. Kaylee was away at the time. Xana's father fixed the door, Bethany reported. Also discovered in the new documents that Kohberger appeared to spy on police the night of the murders. Kohberger searched for a police scanner website to listen to the Pullman Police Department's radio calls in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. Browser records from his phone show investigators found a search in Kohberger's Chrome history showing he did a Google search for broadcastify.com-listen-feed Pullman Police and Fire Dispatch Live audio feed at 12:26 a.m. A witness reported strange behavior at WSU. Kohberger was studying for a PhD in criminology at Washington State University in Pullman and working as a TA to help cover the cost. A colleague told police he believed Kohberger attempted to use his authority as a TA to inappropriately interact with female students, new documents revealed. The witness said Kohberger often talked about wanting a girlfriend and that they discussed this topic on many occasions. The same witness told investigators that he noticed injuries on Kohberger's face and hands on at least 2 separate occasions in October and November 2022, just weeks prior to the Idaho student homicides. One injury was described as a large scratch on Kohberger's face that looked like scratches from fingernails. The witness also said he saw wounds on Kohberger's knuckles and asked about them. Kohberger claimed he'd been in a car accident. While Kohberger had several encounters with police due to traffic infractions, there is no known record of a collision. The TA described Kohberger as intelligent but selfish and claimed he would mislead others about shared assignments and leave others to complete work meant for Kohberger. He added that following the murders of the 4 students in Moscow that Kohberger started talking much more than usual, and his conversations felt like those from someone who wanted to vent.
Washington State University said it wasn't really our business. We continued classes like nothing happened. Bryan still showed up to class. Before the murders, Bryan was very put together, shaven, had his hair done. After that, there was less time put into his appearance. He also started writing paragraphs on how good our work was and sending emails reminding us to turn in assignments. But he was getting in those arguments with a professor. He was warned multiple times, yet he kept pushing.
The state's evidence, as an overview, would show
A distinctive K-bar knife sheath was found on one of the victims' bed containing DNA that matched Bryan Kohberger, identified using genetic genealogy via a familial DNA match to his father's profile. Prosecutors emphasized it's a single-source male DNA match located at the crime scene.
Police linking Kohberger to the murders by collecting his father's DNA from trash outside the family home and matching that to DNA they say they discovered on the button snap of a knife sheath that was on the bed next to the body of victim Madison Mogen.
Digital forensic evidence confirmed Kohberger had recently purchased a K-bar knife before the murders.
back in March of 2022, he purchased online a K-bar knife and sheath with an Amazon gift card.
A surviving roommate, Dylan, saw a masked man with bushy eyebrows and athletic build leaving the house, all traits matching Kohberger's physical description.
And saw the defendant, who was dressed in black with a black balaclava on, holding some sort of container in his hand. She saw him leave the house through the direction of the kitchen where that sliding door is.
Security footage captured a white Hyundai Elantra circling the crime scene around 4 a.m. on November 13th, 2022, matching Kohberger's vehicle.
These security videos from a camera on a house near the murder scene. Videos that show a white sedan, a car that investigators believe was driven by Bryan Kohberger, making repeated passes at the King Road house that night before the murders.
Later that morning, the car almost loses control as it makes the corner.
Kohberger's phone pinged on cell towers near the victim's house approximately 12 times in the prior months and on the night of the murders. Signal patterns aligned with the Elantra's movement.
Mr. Kohberger's phone returned to the area of King Road. We don't know exactly what he did. About 9 o'clock in the morning, he was there for about 10 minutes and then returned to his Pullman residence.
A photo taken after the murders shows Kohberger giving a thumbs up. It also appears he had just showered.
Evidence taken from the defendant's phone that he took a selfie of himself on his phone in what appears to be the bathroom of his Pullman apartment with a thumbs up.
Surveillance showed him scrubbing his car and apartment. He also transferred car registration to delay police linking his vehicle.
Following Sunday, business records show that the defendant began searching for a K-bar knife and a K-bar knife sheath to replace the one that was left at the scene. There were at least attempts by the defendant to delete or alter his purchase history on Amazon where all these transactions had occurred. Later that week, Kohberger went to motor vehicle licensing here in Idaho in Pullman to change his car registration from Pennsylvania to Washington. The weapon itself, the knife, has not yet been recovered. The defendant's apartment in Pullman was searched, as well as his office, and there was virtually nothing there. Nothing of evidentiary value was found. The defendant's car was seized, and it was actually pretty much disassembled internally. And it also had been cleaned. There was a bucket of cleaner right beside it. And those compartments in the doors, they were spotless. The defendant's car had been meticulously cleaned inside. And the state would present to the jury that that was part of the defendant's plan in covering up this. The defendant has studied crime. In fact, he did a detailed paper on crime scene processing.
I met him in the fall of 2018 when he came to DeSales University. He selected the forensic track. There were 3 undergraduate courses in the forensic track that I taught, and he was in all of them. Well, one was Introduction to Forensic Psychology. Another was my death investigation class, which was called Psychological Sleuthing. And the third one was called Dangerous Minds, the Psychology of Antisocial Behavior. The antisocial behavior course involves serial killers and mass murderers. And we do a lot of case analysis. I use two books that I wrote. One was written with the BTK killer and his decision process and the crimes and how he thought about them and felt about them and what was it like for him, to be caught. So that's a very intense book. And also I have one called The Mind of a Murderer, which was about various behavioral experts over the past century who interviewed killers, mass murderers, and serial killers, spending a lot of time with them to get as close as possible to their process of becoming a criminal. And so he would have been exposed to that. And then he got into the graduate program in criminal justice for a master's degree. And he took a course with me called Behavioral Criminology. He seemed like eager to be in the classroom. He was polite. He was respectful, intense, and curious. There was no reason for me to think that he was anything other than someone who was really interested in this potential career. When I look back, there really isn't anything that stood out to me. There really weren't any red flags. He was always really quite respectful and grateful. He would thank me for things. He was attentive. He would do the work. I didn't have any concerns. Now looking back, I would look at maybe some of the things that interested him as being, something that gives me pause. But I think just the idea of wanting to study offenders and what their thought process was, how they felt about their crimes, wanting to study that, and then finding out that this is a person who's now saying he's guilty of doing these things. I have to look at the framework of what I taught and wonder, did I inspire him? I was completely floored. I didn't believe it. His demeanor that we saw was that he was confident that he was going to be able to prove his innocence. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. But as months go by and he kept saying that he had an alibi, and I wondered, well, why are you sitting in jail? Give us your alibi, get out. When he said his alibi, and it was clearly not an alibi, and he would have known that from all the classes that he had. I think that was when I was floored that this is my student who has done these things. I really thought Bryan Kohberger was a promising student who really could have made a mark in this career in a very positive way.
It's very clear there was some frustrations amongst the family during the investigation process and the court process.
Is this justice?
No.
No.
No. And when the house was torn down, a lot of people felt like the universities were trying to suppress the story and move on before there was ever even a trial.
Despite the objections from some of the victims' families, the university defending their decision to move forward.
Our understanding is from a legal standpoint, everyone was finished with the house. For our community, it was time for the house to come down.
The school also saying it costs them $700 a day to hire security to keep people out.
When you have a prosecution that just is okay with covering everything up and not telling you what's going on, it's hard to be accurate. I don't think they really want anyone talking to the media and questioning. Remember these people said that it was a crime of passion.
If you eliminate everything else that may have gone on, it could be because there was no burglary, there was no robbery, there was no hostage taking, there was no nothing, just a crime and gone.
Is that the police told you?
Well, yeah, there is no burglary apparent. Everything was where it was, so.
It was targeted.
We believe it was a targeted attack. I mean, to be honest, you're going to have to trust us on that at this point because we're not going to release why we think that.
And, it was an isolated event, all this language, and then they even said, you're going to have to trust us.
It seems like the word targeted has had different understandings for different people who are listening, and perhaps isn't the best word to use.
You're just going to have to wait and trust us, and now we've waited, and it's like, no. Well, there was no connection whatsoever that we could establish. So how do you get isolated? How do you get targeted? So I think it's more about covering up some of the mistakes that they made. They don't want to talk about destroying the crime scene and how questionable that was. So they wrap this SEAL thing around, trying to pretend like they're trying to protect people and doing all that. But they gave out people's initials at the very beginning. So
they have told us that it was targeted, but they told us they can't tell who. We asked specifically, and they said, we'll try to get that information to you. And they got back to us a day or so later, and they said, we're sorry, we can't give you that information. But then a day later, we saw in the news that it was not targeted, or they think the whole house was targeted.
How could it not be a planned thing? How could it not have been targeted?
But why are you defending somebody who just killed 4 people? Why are you not even making him stand in the courtroom and admit that he killed 4 people?
All right, and Mr. Kohberger, just to make it easier, you don't need to stand when you speak to me. I appreciate the sign of respect, but for convenience, you can remain seated, all right?
And they're literally, you've been so respectful. You can sit down when you plead guilty, with a yes and no answer. So
I'm Keely's older brother. There are no words that can fully describe her spirit, but if you knew her, you knew joy, you knew light. My family's fought tirelessly, not just for answers, but for accountability. We've stood in front of cameras, behind closed doors, and across from people who didn't want us to speak, but we did, and we won't stop now. Nearly every murder case prosecuted by Bill Thompson. Same pattern is emerged in the Silas Parks and John Lee cases. both of which prosecuted by Bill Thompson. Her capital-eligible crimes were resolved through plea agreements, sidestepping trials and diminishing public accountability. The most egregious of these crimes was the brutal killing of Whitney Park, a young pregnant woman whose life was taken by her husband, Silas Parks, an act of cruelty that not only ended her life, but also the life of her unborn child. And yet, despite the devastating nature of this crime, possibility of parole after just 5 years. There was no trial, no full accounting of what Whitney endured, no acknowledgement in the legal outcomes of the child she was carrying. For Whitney's family, for anyone who believes that justice system should speak forcefully for victims, this wasn't justice. It was a deal, and it was like so many others under Thompson's watch. It prioritized expedience over accountability. We find ourselves reliving that pattern in the current case. Despite the magnitude and brutality of the crime, the prosecution chose to accept a plea deal behind closed doors, without trial, without ever consulting our family in any meaningful way. In fact, we learned from the plea deal that had been finalized from an email from the prosecution team. Not in person, not with warning, not with respect. That moment underscored what we feared all along, and that this case was following the same well-worn path toward expedience over justice.